Hello and welcome to the second Debian conference online, here from my balcony in the beautiful town of Wernigerode. I would like to present the consequences we have drawn in the Debian Med team of 1 year of pandemie and the lesson we learned in the Debian Med team. As a short introduction, I want to tell everybody who's not knowing Debian Med something about the project. The main points are teammetrics statistics, and not only for the Debian Med team, but also in general for Debian about development cycles. I would like to say something about long-term contributions as a result of COVID-19 hackathons, and the result of the following hackathons and an online sprint of our team. Finally, I will draw some summary. Yes, what is Debian Med? I have shown these slides several times. It's basically a crazy idea that was born after a lot of wine at DebConf 1 in Bordeaux, and we prepared, influenced by this wine, the first talk about the concept what finally was Debian Med, and without this name and without the people behind it, but it was just fun. Well, my view on Debian is that we have a lot of applications which are bundled into Debian packages by single maintainers. At least this is the old Debian view. We now have rather packaging teams, but those teams are working on smaller and larger packages. I started with packaging WordNet, which is a pretty unimportant package. I just needed a monolingual dictionary, which is this. The user just installed these packages on the computer and is hopefully happy with this. But what about new users who are confronted with a huge package pool of more than 50,000 binary packages? In the time when I started with Debian, which was in 1996, I was able to browse the whole package list in maybe 2 or 3 hours and pick what I need. But a user who now starts reading the package pool is more or less frustrated. So what is our solution for this? We have so-called blends. Blends are addressing specific user needs, for instance here Scholle Linux or Debian Edu, for teachers, for their needs in schools. We have Debian Med, what I'm talking about, for bioinformaticians, medical care. We have Debian GIS for geographical information systems. We have also like Debian Astro, Debian Science, Debian Electronics. There's a lot of blending done, either formally following the blends framework or at least mentally by a packaging team who is providing certain applications in a certain work field. Assume some person wants to do some gene sequencing and wants to install all the packages which are useful for gene sequencing on the computer. So what to do? It's so easy to do this preparation for your computer. The person just needs to install one single meta package called medbio, which is so-called task in the blends framework. And this meta package simply depends from all these, for bioinformaticians, well-known packages, and everything is installed on the computer with one single command. So the support we can give for bioinformaticians is repackage what you need, and you have very easy access to this by installing a single meta package by one line command, and your computer will be prepared after a certain time the installation might take. In Debian Med we have different tasks. For instance, as I've shown, the biology task, we have a task for installing applications we have libraries that can be used to build biological applications, which is in BioDev. It contains BioPerl, BioPython, BioJava, certain libraries usually well known by bioinformaticians. We have a certain amount of packages in the epidemiology task, for instance some R packages. We have medical imaging, we can support development of medical imaging, we have something about medical practice and so on. As a short excursus, I would like to mention that the people behind all this work is about 45 Debian developers and Debian maintainers. They are not active anymore, not all active anymore. Some of them faded away, like usual developers who come to Debian and go. Others went over to other fields inside Debian, but we are these 45 people who confirmed to work on the project at a certain point in time. And I did a survey because I was really interested in who of these people is joining Debian or has joined Debian and got the developer status or the maintainer status because Debian Med exists. So the question is not will I take part in Debian Med or not, but I'm so convinced that Debian Med is the right project for me that I really want to become a Debian developer. And this survey, 23 Debian developers confirmed, yes, I'm a Debian developer only because the Debian Med project exists. And this is one of the numbers I'm the most proud about, because if people are coming to Debian because we are such a nice project, this has some meaning. And it's not a small number, because the Debian Med project itself is not that important for Debian. It's a very specific field of work, not many users. We have very low popcorn rates in Debian Med project, but if we were able to attract 2% of the Debian developers, maybe more depending how you count. We are about 1,000 Debian developers, and 2% are just attracted by this not so important project. Then we probably do something right in the project. And I would love if other projects, other teams would be that attractive as well, so we could gather more people into Debian than we are now. 16 out of those 23 above extended their activity to other fields in Debian, which is cool, which means people enter Debian via Debian Med and then they are doing other very useful stuff there. I really like this. And 13 out of the 23 above are currently active in Debian Med. As I said, some people moved on, are not in Debian anymore, and other people simply stick to other things in Debian, which is fine. And another number which is especially interesting for this talk, we have 3 Debian developers and 1 Debian maintainer who is in the process of becoming a developer after the April hackathon, which is really cool, which means the fact that the pandemie has hit our world and that we try to find an answer in the free software has brought new development power to Debian Med project. New volunteers who are really dedicated to work on our problems. And well, each thing has good and bad sides, and I think for the Debian Med project the pandemie has some positive effect. So this, as I said, the developers of the Debian Med project are creating certain so-called tasks in the Blends framework, And bioinformatics is really covered very good because we have a lot of free software in the field of bioinformatics. It's developed at universities and so naturally free software will be used also in science. In science, the software is part of the methods of the scientific research, and you need to publish, and publishing basically means free software. There are some scientists who did not really understood it, and we are discussing with them. We are trying to convince them to free their software, and sometimes we are even successful, and sometimes we are not. We are currently working on so-called workflows, which is kind of a sequence of bioinformatics software where some data go in and some results go out. This is called workflow or pipelines to run some certain programs in a sequence. It's kind of a hot topic in bioinformatics to normalize processes and to rely on using the same parameters for process. And we are also doing the first steps into the artificial intelligence. We try to package TensorFlow because a lot of bioinformatics packages are working with this. We also have PyTorch in Debian, which is basically packaged by the Debian Science team. Debian Science team is a friendly project. We are not competing about packages. We are doing things together with them. And most people of the Debian Med team are also part of the Debian Science team. We have several packages of medical imaging, so the coverage is quite good. We have just one package to maintain a medical practice. It's called GNU-Med. Maybe we get back free med forms, which we lost for some transition things, and the development is not really clear. We have several R packages which are dealing with questions of epidemiologists, and we are also working on the TensorFlow AI packages and other things because this is also very frequently used in epidemiology. Well, we would like to support hospitals, but unfortunately we have close to nothing there. There is a very huge project called Vista, and this is using a database called FIS-GTM, which is packaged and which we try to keep up to date. But we have not really much more than, well, quite a stable but unspecific OS for hospitals. Even if you would like to do more, it is quite hard because you need experts who test those software. There is a lot of responsibility connected to that the software is working, and we are just volunteers, and volunteers can do the packaging, but then we need experts to take over the guarantee that everything works like it's expected to work. So this is work in progress, and I'm not really sure if we can manage this. Yeah, in this talk I want to discuss some graphs I basically created in the teammetrics effort. I'm running some kind of monthly statistics about discussions, commits, uploads, bug closing, and so on. And some of these graphs are about the Debian Med team. I have also some graphs from the R packaging team because it's closely connected to Debian Med packages. We just separated the R packages language-wise, like we have Perl packages, Python packages, and etc., which are not separated to the meaning of the code, but the technique of the code. So, but at least half of the R packages are used by Debian Med. And when I watched these graphs, I learned that we have kind of a common feature here in the whole release process. And so I did also graphs about the data I have for all teams who are joining the team matrix, and I call it the freeze depression. We are just behind, we have just released Bullseye, so we are right behind the Bullseye freeze, and I will show you some interesting features of freezes, and maybe we can find some ideas how to fix some issues. Well, the first graph is about the persons who are committing to Debian Med packages per week. All the graphs I'm showing are on a weekly basis, and I have marked here 3 things. The red dots are Debian releases. The blue dots are Debian Med sprints. So you see, since 2011 we are doing yearly sprints in the Debian Med team, and this sprints is a really cool thing because we won new developers, we have met each other, and so have a personal relation. So I can really recommend to do such sprints because it's really cool for the development of the team. And finally, I have marked with light green dots the dates for the hackathon sprint weeks. So, because this graph was made for the sprint, and the talk is about the COVID-19 effect, you see here the first hackathon, and you see that you have an all-time high of commitment of persons committing to the Debian Med team. We have 24 persons committing in 1 week. This is an all-time high. You see about 10 people are usually committing per week in normal times, right? Unnormal times are here, for instance, the Alliot migration, where we have some peaks, not so much, but this Alliot migration triggered for sure commits. These are kind of artifacts which are not connected to some specific development, just a technical movement. Typically you can also see a peak in the sprint week, because more people are joining our work, and here this sprint was not so settled by many people, so whatever. So I have no idea about the detailed issues why these peaks are not so high as the former ones, but anyway. What I learned when looking at this graph is that in the time of freeze, so before the release, we have a low number of persons committing, and this starts again once the release is out and people are starting working again. Same here, similarly here. And I will come back later to this. So this graph is not showing the number of people committing, but the number of the actual commits, right? The number of people. We have people who are committing a lot, people who are committing only a little bit. So what we see here is that we had, at the time of the sprint, some all-time high of the number of commits. We had some really strong peaks here in no certain area, but even this one is even more than the hackathon peak. And I checked out the UDD data for this, and it's pretty clear that these peaks are done by a very low number of people. This was the majority of these commits was done by me. Probably had 2 boring weeks where I had a lot of time for Debian. This was done by 4 people. I will show the names and the numbers on the next slide. Well, the explanation is this is right before the freeze. So this sprint was inside the freeze. So before the freeze, we really tried to get all our packages updated. And so our before the freeze, we push a lot of packages with latest versions, polish the packages, upload those packages that were not uploaded for a longer time, which means not rebuild with the latest tools. And these peaks are definitely connected to this process of updating everything before the freeze. And then you have the peaks in the sprint wings. All right. So as I said, some peaks are related to the release process and not really connected to hackathons or sprints. And we have this all-time peak of 716 commits in 1 week, and it is caused by only 4 people, basically. Not if you sum up, there are some others who also contributed. This was me with 450, Etienne Mollier with 72, Steffen Wöller with 62, and Nilesh Patra with 58 commits. So everybody committed way more than only 1 commits per day. So this is, you see, we are really dedicated to get the latest and greatest out in the next Debian release. This is the reason for those peaks. Because we just do this effort, we have to get up-to-date packages. And the next slide, I try to check the packaging-r team work, which is a little bit delayed according to the hackathon time. My explanation is that inside the hackathon we found out what is really necessary to package. And then the packaging work was a little bit delayed and the commits happened a little bit later. The other commits are also not that astonishing. We have here the Elliott migration and also probably some R transitions from one R version to the other R version. Looking at the actually uploads, you also see the delay after the hackathon and some kind of peaks that are connected to the Elliott migration and R transition. And also here you see the very, very typical freeze depression, as I call it, bumping right after the BALS-I release, bumping the numbers of uploads, which also happened here very visibly. The others are not so straight because our team is quite young and you cannot see it in that classical manner. So my idea was that this freeze depression is maybe a general feature of all Debian teams, not only from the Debian Med team and our packaging team. And so, well, I had the teammetrics data, so I just thought about I mark the freeze time, and in this terminology, formerly we had only freeze, now we have transition freeze, soft freeze, hard freeze. In the following graphs, the marking is the transition freeze when it started to exist and or the normal freeze. There are some kind of artificial peaks. Even inside the freeze time, we have one peak of 3,500 commits by the packaging JavaScript team. I have no idea what this means. The JavaScript team members will be able to explain it, but everything else is the usual pattern we observed also in our team. There are for sure also other examples of peaks outside the teams. For instance, there's one maximum peak of 7,315 commits by the pkg-r team, which is peaking out in the graph. You can see it here. These are basically triggered by the pkg-r team. And here is peak of the JavaScript team right inside the last freeze. I don't know what this means. For the color codes, red line is a release date, and the light red line is the start of the freeze or transition freeze. Typically you can see here the move from alia to salsa, so this artifact is clear. Some other peaks are not really clear, but the valleys, and I'm talking about the valleys here, are very clear. Every freeze has a drastic drop down of commits, and every release is followed by a drastic bump of commits here. You see it for every last release very clearly. Here's another peak which needs to be discussed, but I guess this has some reasons the according team can explain. Otherwise, we have, even in the earlier releases, we can see this by the commits. Probably in the well, before 2005 or 2006, not so many people were using version control systems, so these graphs are more or less at zero, but the last ones are pretty clear. Well, looking at the uploads of the teams in teammetrics, it's the same pattern. You have uploads in the Aliot migration phase. Obviously, the commits by the JavaScript team did not result in actual uploads. Right? If we had matching uploads to those commits, then we would have some peak here. It's only a small one, so we have right after the freeze drop down of the uploads. We have right before the freeze a really huge peak, which is for the bookworm release really huge. For others, it is definitely clearly visible that people start uploading in the last weeks like crazy, in last weeks before the freeze, and then there's a drop, and after the release people are uploading again. So you can see, as I said, kind of a pre-freeze activity. 3 teams did a lot of uploads right before the freeze. It was the pkg-r team, the Ruby Extras team, and the pkg-go team. As I said, the Debian Med team did it a little bit earlier to be sure that we make it in time. So I just was talking about these peaks before the freeze when I had shown the actual Debian Med graphs. So let's look back at Debian Med graphs. This is the graph of the uploads of the Debian Med packages per week. Freeze depression can be seen clearly. As I said, I do not want to discuss this anymore. Also here is a peak of the pre-freeze activity, right? And what we see here, to come back to the hackathon, is that in the week of the hackathon we had some peak, but the all-time maximum of uploads is delayed. And I have the same explanation like in the pkg-r team, that inside the hackathon week the development was done, and then some more polishing was needed to get this bump of uploads. So far for the interpretation of this one. Otherwise, the typical pattern, peaks in the sprint weeks, which are, well, always in recommendation to do those sprints. Coming back to the persons who are doing the actual uploads, same features with freeze depression, but interestingly is that we have no all-time peak in the hackathon week. Why is this the case? Well, we had, if you remember my first slide, the most people committing to the Debian Med team, but we have not a maximum of persons uploading. This can be easily explained by the fact that not every contributor have upload permissions, and so we had a lot of people, and these 15 people here, or 14 people, were sponsoring the uploads. So we had contributions with people from people who are not who are not able to upload, and so this is, in my opinion, a very good sign that outsiders contributed a lot of interesting stuff, which led to a lot of uploads, a lot of people who are committing, but not of a high number of uploaders. I have no actual explanation for the other peaks of uploaders. Looking at the people who are posting to the Debian Med list, you see all-time high in the Hackathon week. We are discussing a lot. We had a lot of nice contributions also by just writing us interesting ideas, contacting upstreams, asking for free licenses. It was a really cool week. I will never forget. It was the coolest week in Debian I experienced. Well, besides DebConf, maybe. So this is the people, the number of posts to the Debian mailing list. It looks like not so a lot of people posted, but not so much. But the actual posts were lower in the first hackathon and higher in the second. I have no idea why, but yeah, it just happened. Maybe we had more to talk and not so much to commit. And also the typical sprints has triggered a local peak in the number of posts to the mailing list. What were the means of communication in the hackathon? We did daily Jitsi meetings, and we continued these meetings on a weekly basis. And finally, we agreed that 2 meetings per month are sufficient. We are doing it on the 2nd and on the 17th of the month. So we are moving over the week. So if some people have problems with certain weekdays, we can reach those people as well. Our main communication means is a mailing list, and we are really conservative with this, and I like this because it's archived and it's searchable. We have an IRC channel on the Debian Med team, but it's not so well settled by people. Maybe it's just not the habit of the main drivers of the project. We also had some Telegram channel, which I was not so really happy about, but yeah, it existed and was also used by some people. But in the last sprint in February, we established a matrix channel, which I'm more happy about and which more or less took over the role of the Telegram channel. Yeah, I really need to repeat myself for my last talk about the really huge support by the ftpmaster for the hackathon. Many packages in the new queue were processed in less than 24 hours. Not 24 days or 24 months, 24 hours was the time. And this was the most fun in my whole time in Debian. It was really, really cool. Thanks a lot to ftpmaster. It is extremely motivating to get such support. And just to quote some understatement of Scott Kitterman, who did most of the work, I didn't do anything beyond taking some time off work, so I would have more time to pick up the FTP team and getting the new packages in. Really cool. Thanks a lot, Scott. Yeah, we had different contributions in hackathons. Former contributors who came back for a certain period of time. We had permanent contributors who increased their activity. Right? We had other Debian developers and Debian maintainers, specifically ftpmaster, who contributed. We had new contributors. for a certain period of time on one hand, and new contributors who really stick to the project. And for instance, those new contributors were, say the name Oleg Wojna, who cared for Bazel. Bazel is a precondition for TensorFlow, this Bazel build system. It's a lot of work. And this work was basically done by a not Debian Med team member. Just because Oleg said, well, it's cool, I want to support them, and thanks a lot. And this short time contribution for this work was really helpful. But there is now a Debian Bazel team, and Bazel will be packaged and continued. But it was basically kicked by this Debian Med hackathon, which is also a cool thing. We had former and new GSOC and Outreachy students contributing. We had non-technical contributors checking licenses, program versions, contacting upstreams, and so on. This was also really helpful because in my view, Debian Med project is not only developers and hackers, it is the connection between users, interested persons, and technical persons who can build together a nice system which is good for everybody. And finally, I do not want to forget the contribution of the family members who had a lot of patience. I remember my wife accepting that I was hacking like crazy all the time, even if there was holidays involved in Germany. Yes, thanks a lot. I have also seen people with babies on their lap when sitting on the video conference. So family members supporting those people who are joining here should also deserve some thank you. Well, the following hackathons and the online sprint did not really match my hope I had. Maybe I was not realistic here. The initial spirit of this huge task somehow got lost. We were productive, we did interesting work, but it was not like the first week. And our yearly sprint that was done online the first time was also not like the former real-life meetings. So the set of attendees was different than in real-life sprints. The people who join a real-life sprint, well, they sit in the train and go to a location or go by plane, and then they are in a hotel and they do what's done on the sprint. They are hacking, they are eating a bit and sleeping and nothing else. If you are at home and say, oh, I have no time, I do this or that, so the chance that people are distracted from the sprint works is, yeah, it's given, and it's not everybody is dealing this with the same intention. So we had, unfortunately, long-term attendees with less or even no activity. On the other hand, we had more non-European attendees, which is not normal in our sprints because the Debian Med project is quite Europe-centric. For no good reason, it's just a fact. We had one Jitsi room continuously open, with the idea that we are sitting in one room, but it did not really work out that way. So my hope that we would sit in one room was not fulfilled in this. But we did every second hour a meeting inside this room, and this was quite productive. So these 2 hourly meetings was helpful to keep the sprint running. So, looking at the long-term effects of the COVID-19 sprints in the Debian Med project, my conclusion is that the Debian Med project got a totally new drive. I think this is the right word. It is even more to work now in this, more fun to work in this project, and I really like it. And while the actual spin of the hackathon faded away, we had at least, namely 4 new DDs and DMs who are continuously contributing since then. I really need to say the name. It's Etienne Moyer, who is doing some work in high performance computing. He's competent in Python, has solved GCC problems and so on. Nilesh Patra, he is trying really hard to beat me in uploads, and he has succeeded in several months in this year. We have pkg-r, which has a lot of Java competence and has worked really hard to get some really long-standing projects in, and I'm really thankful for this work, because we were lacking some important software in the project, and now we have them, or we are in the process to get them packaged. And Cheyenne Dowse, last but not least, contributed to teammetrics with R scripts. Some of the graphs you've seen are done by him, and she's doing also a lot of packaging and testing. And this is really cool to have these 4 people as a consequence of this sprint, more or less. The majority of the newcomers is not originated in the field of bioinformatics or medicine. These 4 are not bioinformaticians like me. I'm a physicist by profession, so yes, it is not a precondition to work in this field to package software for this field. And this is what I mean, that we need a connection between the users and the developers. And I think we found some good compromise. I wish some more users would join and tell us what they need to make us packaging what they need. So everybody is kindly invited to share this fun with us and join the project. The long-term effect of COVID-19 on my own work inside the project is that when the hackathon was running, my work shifted from packaging, which I'm doing usually, very stronger, to mentoring, organizing, explaining newcomers what needs to be done, and pointing to documentation and document what we did, organizing video conference and so on. Later it went back to normal, but with the support of more developers. Namely, Nilesh Patra is taking over work I previously felt quite alone with. Writing some infrastructure stuff, organizing things on Salsa and so on. It's definitely even more fun than before to see all those skilled developers doing stuff I could never have approached myself, because I have a limited set of knowledge in certain technical things, and I just need technical help, and it's so cool to have some backup to say, oh, I know you are competent in this field. Could you have a look, please? This is so cool. And I'm very happy about all those hackathon contributors. But on the other hand, I'm continuously thinking how we can keep on gathering more contributors, because it's more fun. And I'm optimistic, but we need to work on this. Okay. So this was my talk at DebConf 21. This slide is from DebConf 20, and you see the new t-shirts hanging here around on my balcony, and this is my way to celebrate DebConf at home. Have fun, guys. This session is open for a question now.
Okay, we are back.
Not end.
Yeah, right. So we have a couple of questions, but we don't have much time, so we'll just pick one. So here we have a question. As packager, is there some special care one can or has to implement for programs which might have been certified for clinical diagnostics or similar demanding situation?
Yeah, this is a good question, because the problem is we are all volunteers, and we cannot take over responsibility of certification and something like this. So we
So we
am I,
have a couple of
Mhm.
questions, but we don't have much time, so just pick one. So here we have a question. As packager, is there some special care one can or has to implement the programs which may have been certified for clinical diagnostics or similar demanding situations?
well, the point is we are just volunteers.
Are we hearing echo? I guess it's an echo.
I'm hearing just an echo.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody was speaking. Sorry. All right. So there's another question. I want to package something for the medicine team, but something that isn't R related, but instead of something small that is super helpful, I can't seem to find any packages in the WNPP or in general on GitHub that could help.
Yeah.
Where does the med team get most of their programs to package?
Well, you are kindly invited to. Oh, there is some kind of strange echo here. Okay, yeah, I start again answering the question. Please join the Debian Med mailing list, and there we will guide you kindly to all the things you need to know.
That isn't R related, but instead of something small that is super helpful, I can't seem to find any packages. Right. So I guess that's the end of the talk. Thank you very much, Andreas, for giving this talk, and it's been great interacting with you. It's a lot of fun.
It was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andreas. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye.